But I think people can choose to be not ordinary. You know, they can choose to not necessarily conform to the conventions that were taught to them by their parents. Yes, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. I think also just don't be afraid of new arenas. You can get a book, you can learn something, and experiment with your hands, and just make it happen. Find a way or make a way to get something done. Not being motivated personally by money is not the same as saying that I think SpaceX shouldn't make money. In fact, it's very important that SpaceX is profitable, or we will not be able to earn the money necessary to continue future developments. It's like the Nike slogan, just do it. That's, just showing up is half the battle. You got to try hard to do it, and don't be afraid of failure. You also need to be rooted in reality. So you shouldn't. It's easy to get high in your own supply. You've got to not be afraid to innovate, but also don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're going to get fixated on a bad solution. You go to the very basic laws of physics, the things which we believe to be extremely well demonstrated. In other words, the reason they call it a law is that no one has ever demonstrated an exception to that, ever. As Edison said, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. I think it's really a mindset. You have to decide, we're going to try to do things differently. Well, provided that they're better. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be different and better. But I think you just have to sort of decide. Let's think beyond the normal stuff. There's this great holy grail potential in the future. You have to stay grounded in the short term. So because if you don't do things that pay the bills, you're not going to achieve the ultimate long-term objective. But it's nice to have that sort of holy grail long-term potential out there as an inspiration for coming to work. No, I'm a volunteer. I don't need the money. There's nothing. It's not like I'm sitting here saying I wish I could buy such and such a thing. I could buy it. I get paid minimum wage. Actually, I don't even get overtime. But I think people can choose to be not ordinary. They can choose to not necessarily conform to the conventions that were taught to them by their parents. Yes, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. Well, it's like the Nike slogan, just do it. Definitely one of the best days of my life, and I think also for a lot of people here at SpaceX, it's the culmination of a dream. I messed up the first 3 launches. The launches failed. Unfortunately, the 4th launch, which was that was the last money that we had for Falcon 1, the 4th launch worked, or that would have been it for SpaceX. But fate liked us that day. The 4th launch worked. Today is the 9th anniversary of that launch.
3, 2, 1, 0.
We're in stage 1.
Liftoff indication. We have liftoff.
It's a very emotional day, actually.
Space operation confirmed.
So it's about enabling the extension of life beyond Earth. Fundamentally, the future is vastly more exciting and interesting if we're a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species than if we're not. You want to be inspired by things. You want to wake up in the morning and think the future's going to be great. And that's what
what being a spacefaring civilization is all about. It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past. And I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being among the stars. This is the first time in the 4 billion year history of Earth that has even been a possibility. You can have big dreams, but you've got to have some sense of how you can make those a reality. You've got to make sure that success is one of the possible outcomes. Becoming a multi-planet species beats the hell out of being a single planet species. And if we're building this thing to go to the moon and Mars, then why not go to other places on Earth as well?
Just have to sort of decide, let's think beyond the normal stuff. When you try new things, you try this idea, that idea, a large number of them are not going to work. And that has to be okay. I'm a big believer in us becoming a space-faring civilization and ultimately extending life beyond Earth. The extension of life to multiple planets for the first time. Extending life to another planet is a huge quantum leap. The long-term vision is to help make life multiplanetary. Yeah, thanks to the hard work of basically
delivering for them.
Yeah, make sure if your customers love you, your odds of success are dramatically higher.
Yeah, so I noticed I picked up two kind of themes from what you were discussing. One was somewhat audacious goals, and the other was, I don't think I heard you use the word profit in anything that you spoke about. You seem to be, each thing is pointed at like reinvigorating an industry or bringing back space missions. How much of your success do you attribute to having really audacious goals, or versus just not being focused on the short term, money coming in or investors?
Unfortunately, one does have to be focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company. The most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it. And have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. There's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company. Because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you keep your focus on the big picture when you're constantly faced with, we could be out of business in a month?
Well, it's just a very small percentage of mental energies on the big picture. Like you know where you're generally heading for, and the actual path is going to be some sort of zigzaggy thing in that direction. You try not to deviate too far from the path that you want to be on, but you're going to have to do that to some degree. But I don't want to diminish the. I mean, I think the profit motive is a good one if the rules of an industry are properly set up. So there's nothing fundamentally wrong with profit. In fact, profit just means that people are paying you more for whatever you're doing than you're spending to create it. That's a good thing. and if that's not the case, then you'll be out of business, and rightfully so. Because you're not adding enough value. Now, there are cases, of course, where people will do bad things in order to achieve profit, but that's actually quite unusual. I mean, because usually the rules are set up mostly correctly, like not completely, but mostly correctly.
How do you spend your days now? Like, what do you allocate most of your time to?
My time is mostly split between SpaceX and Tesla, and of course I try to spend a part of every week at OpenAI. Basically half a day at OpenAI most weeks. But other than that, it's really SpaceX and Tesla. And what do you do when you're at
SpaceX or Tesla? Like, what does your time look like there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think a lot of people think I must spend a lot of time with media or on businessy things, but actually almost all my time, like 80% of it is spent on engineering and design. So it's developing next generation product. That's 80% of it.
You probably don't remember this. A very long time ago, many, many years, you took me on a tour of SpaceX. And the most impressive thing was that you knew every detail of the rocket and every piece of engineering that went into it. And I don't think many people get that about you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think I'm kind of a business person or something, which is fine. Like, business is fine, but but really, it's it's like at SpaceX. Gwynne Shotwell is Chief Operating Officer. She kind of manages legal, finance, sales, and kind of general business activity. And then my time is almost entirely with the engineering team, working on improving the Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft, and developing the Mars colonial architecture. And then at Tesla, it's working on the Model 3 and some in the design studio, typically half a day a week, dealing with aesthetics and look and feel things, and then most of the rest of the week is just going through engineering of the car itself, as well as engineering of the factory.
How should someone figure out how they can be most useful?
Whatever this thing is that you're trying to create, what would be the utility delta compared to the current state of the art times how many people it would affect? So that's why I think having something that makes a big difference but affects a sort of small to moderate number of people is great, as is something that makes even a small difference but affects a vast number of people. Like the area under the curve. Yeah, exactly. The area under the curve would actually be rough. There was some recent article about how I'm such a great marketer, and I say the stupidest things. That cannot possibly be true. My issue is that I don't have a filter, not that I have too much of a filter. Actually, you know what's great is the Lego movie. I really like the Lego movie. It's really great.
Okay, I know what the headline tomorrow's now going to be.
Everything is awesome. Well, I think any natural resource extraction on Mars would be, the output would be for Mars. Like, it definitely wouldn't make sense to transport stuff 200 million miles back to Earth. Honestly, like if you had like crack cocaine on Mars, like in pre-packaged, pallets, it still wouldn't make sense to transport it back here. Maybe good times for the Martians, but not back here. It'd be kind of weird if the aliens landed in the ocean with parachutes and be like, okay, nothing to fear. I mean, I think it ends up being a moot point because you want to bring the spaceship back. Like, these spaceships are expensive, okay? They're hard to build. You can't just leave them there. So whether or not people want to come back or not is kind of, like, they can jump on if they want, but they need the spaceship back. 小学生でも笑わない熊田のバカウケ。レジェンドさすがです。Our own U.S. Air Force is funding the Russians to compete against us. It's super messed up. I mean, what the,
Didn't you say to me earlier in this conversation, we don't want to do business with jerks?
who does?
Right. Well, so I'm wondering, well, in my business, sadly, it's occasionally necessary.
Much unfortunate.
The Model X is now over 2 years late. What went wrong?
Well, I do have an issue with punctuality, I have to admit.
You'd have this great shot of green plants on a red background, and I thought, okay, maybe that would get
the money shot. You got to beam
that. Be the money
that
shot, yeah. I'm never quite sure whether that's a sort of a word you can use or not.
Here we are on top of our giant ball of liquid oxygen. They say SpaceX has big balls, and it's true.
You know, nobody's CEO of a company forever. I mean, eventually, you know, they carry you out. You know, a friend asked me at a party, hey, what are you going to call a third generation car? I was like, well, we've got the S and the X, we might as well make it the E, you know. And then it kind of stuck, even though we're just kidding. And then just to sort of add to it, we also just for laughs trademarked the Model Y. But I guess things are pretty dry in the trademark world, so nobody picked up on that. And anyway, then Ford gave us a call and said they were going to sue us for using Model E. And we're like, okay, like Ford's killing sex. I mean, that's terrible.
Hi, my name is Rahul Sanad from Los Angeles, and I have a Tesla watch.
You know, we do not make Tesla watches, I should point out.
It's electric. But,
That's beautiful.
We went on a date. All I was talking about was electric cars. That was not a winning conversation.
So it was a bit of a monologue, was it?
Yeah, she said she said the first question I asked her was, "Do you ever think about electric cars?" She said, no, she never does.
So you learn from that. That wasn't the best shut-up line.
Wasn't great. But it has recently it's been more effective.
Wait, don't go in that way. Don't go in that way. Go away from me.
This is crazy.
Go away from me.
Okay. Okay. Oh, Jesus, sorry. Speaking of mishaps, I just stabbed you.
That's the reason why I'm sitting here talking with a guy from Tesla.
All right, you get the last word, my friend.
I love you, Will.
So you wreck the car. You get out of the car. You're doubling over with laughter. And the person with you said, why are you laughing that you just wrecked this car? And you said, no, you don't know the funny part. It wasn't insured.
Well, the punchline's correct. I'm probably number one on the list of famous last words. I said, watch this. Yeah, watch this. That could be awkward with a rocket launch.
Stock price down again today, 10%. Do you care about that?
I mean, it kind of sucks running a public company.
You think it's more dangerous to patent than not to patent?
Since our primary competitors are national governments, the enforceability of patents is questionable.
Much less than we spend on healthcare, but maybe more than we spend on lipstick, you know, something like that. And I like lipstick. It's not like I've got anything against it. Yeah, I can't wait for that comment to go out there.
California taxpayers are going to be on the hook to build the most expensive high-speed rail per mile in the world and the slowest, which is those are not the superlatives you want.
And it's like that just seemed extremely crazy that GM would ignore this because. It's quite rare for people to hold a candlelit vigil about a product, and particularly a GM product. So, I think the reality of being president is that you're actually like the captain of a very huge ship and have a small rudder. Previously, when people have tried to make a reusable system, they found that they would get some portion of the way and then conclude that success was not one of the possible outcomes.
You know, in government programs, of course, the program would still continue for quite some time.
The ultimate goal of SpaceX is to develop the technologies that can take humanity to Mars.
Would you want to be on that flight?
I'd like to go to Mars, absolutely. I think it would be great to be born on Earth and die on Mars, just hopefully not at the point of impact.